Laila is a psychotherapist. I did ask her just to clarify what that was. I am a psycho. So that's giving you a bit of a measure. Laila has worked in many conflict areas throughout the world. She's worked with refugees in Denmark. She's worked in the Palestine and the West Bank and the occupied territories, as well as Darfur and South Sudan. We're really privileged to have Laila here today, and I know a few of us have had the opportunity to have a bit of a conversation the other night. So really, we can certainly say we should be looking forward to Laila and her talking about her experiences. Before we get started, there's just one wee bit of housekeeping which I do repeat every week, which is there's a sign-in sheet going around the room, and I love it if everybody makes sure they fill in their details. Please leave us your contact details, your email, and we'll add you to our mailing list if you're not already on it. Turn off your phones, please. Just remind myself to do that. Or turn them to silent, at least. That would be great, so we don't get interrupted. As you can see as well around the room, we've got Mac IV who are doing recording. And we'll be uploading all of the talks in due course. They'll all go up onto our YouTube channel, hopefully. And once Laila has finished doing her talk, what we hope to do is a bit of a conversation. I have a microphone here. Now, this microphone isn't actually going to make you louder in the room. It's basically for purposes of recording, so it's a rather large instrument. We pass this round when people want to speak. Maybe the less said, better now. You can see where it's all going now already. I'm blaming you and your influence.
Yeah, it's fine. You can blame it on me.
So what I'm going to do first is, I think it'd be a nice idea to get a sense of the people in the room, is for everyone to introduce themselves. If you're with an organisation or you're just an interested person, so if you just say your name and who you are, and if you wish to, where you're from. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Susan Glass, and I'm the Programme Coordinator for the Garden of Reflection, and I'm going to go to my right.
This is Michael Denning. Teenage Junction. I'm an music and I'm also a student.
John Lindsay, the freelance journalist.
Going down there, I wish I was a student.
I love it.
John McCormick, a friend of the Junction and beneficiary of the work of the Junction.
Joe Robinson, the Junction.
Biggie Hillington, Maureen's husband.
Tell them what you have for me. Come on, Dickie, tell them what you have for me. Come on, be brave.
Bucket of stones to throw at
Dennis Golden. Very Sidwell, interested human being.
Gabrielle from Northwest Community Network.
Tim Bad Ryan and just here with my friend Eamon. So just invited in just 10 minutes ago.
Mike Foyle, Creeper Women's Group.
Denise Riley, Creeper Women's Group.
Eamon Dean, Diversity Community Partnership. Jared Dean, Hollywood Trust.
Colin Kelly, interested in desegregating society.
Anne Murray, recently retired educationalist and member of the Junction Committee.
Gemma Harkin, Hollywood Trust.
Cassie Gallagher, interested in financial therapies.
Mary O'Donnell, Women Making Waves.
Fergal Klein, External Social Service.
Jerry Sharkey.
Rona Sharkey, Northwest Women's Collective.
Daniel Mugan, retired.
And Dr. Inder Singh, Foyle Multicultural Forum, Punjabi Culture Association, and friend of Foyle and Derry City Council.
Lila Crowley, Northwest Community Network.
Marjorie Baker, Garden of Reflection Project. Caroline from Towards Understanding and Healing.
Andrew Mitchell, just here. Philippa Robinson, perennial student.
Ryan Hetherington, the Junction.
Is that everybody? Did everybody speak? No.
Sean Hagan, Hollywell Consultancy.
Seamus Farrell, Junction.
Sorry, who's that gentleman sitting beside Dickie?
Joe.
No.
Richie!
Richie's quietly hiding in the background.
Any chance for me to say Richie?
So it's over to you, Laila. That's
It's
everyone.
over to me. Hi. My name is Laila, as she's told you. And I'm from Palestine. I happen to be. So I was thinking to just get, before I speak, a quick feel by just throwing 2 questions and just getting maybe 3 or 4 response. Like, the first question I have in mind, what do you want to, what is your mind, what does you want, I mean, what do you want to hear? What do you want to know about?
Life in Ramallah.
Okay. What else? Since you know I'm blind, right? In case you don't know, now you know. But just quick questions you're curious about, and just to see if we're in harmony, what's in my head and what's in yours.
How do you cope with overwhelming trauma, and what is it that you do?
Right. Uh-huh.
What
And
serious dialogue, if any, is there between the Palestinians and the Israelis?
dialogue? Uh-huh.
Big question.
Okay. Anything else?
What hope have you for that this conflict will end soon or be resolved?
Man, don't I wish. Okay. And what if I were to ask you, what do you know about Palestine and Palestinians? What's the first thing that comes to mind, just in a short sentence?
Gaza Strip.
War.
Gaza Strip, because it's been so much in the news. And oppression.
Occupation.
Excuse me?
Occupation.
Yeah.
Oh, bad leadership.
Okay. What else?
2 people claiming the same land.
Uh-huh.
Sounds familiar?
Okay. Okay. Then I'll try to start and see what to say. So, some of you heard me before, but I like to start that I am a daughter of refugee parents. And because I like to start with challenging the myth of that Palestine is an empty land for homeless people. My parents come from actually a place a few kilometers away from Ben Gurion Airport, and my mother is still alive, 86 years old. And actually my mom is not allowed to go to her old village. It's now treated like, we smuggled her, I'm saying it on the internet. We smuggled my mother to her village because I wanted to watch how my mom reacts to her, to her village. She left when my oldest brother was born in 1948 and was carrying him, and she still once in a while gets into wanting to sharing her story, especially when she sees the Gaza news and sees people collectively escaping their homes, etc. So the village, my family's village is called Al Haditha, and it was wonderful to watch my mom react to her village, because suddenly I really felt like she was an excited teenager with some pride, where she wanted to show us, that place used to be the house of blah blah, God bless him or curse him. You know, you know how villages are here. Everybody. It's so universal. So it was actually lovely and interesting watching my mom. And then we continued going to Jaffa, which is the main city around where my parents used to live. And Jaffa is called the Bride of the Sea. It's a beautiful city. It's now under Israeli law. And like many places where the original inhabitants are very marginalized, now the Palestinian inhabitants have so much problems of drugs and of other kind of problems, because they're very marginalized, not much opportunity. People after 48, they're trying to just survive and couldn't give the very best to their children, etc. So this is a little bit of my background. And I would like to share why I do the work I do also, because it's part of me. Most of my work is around trauma healing or trauma prevention, because I think when trauma happens, if immediately we work with it, there is a chance for prevention of further consequences. And since I I know a little bit about history in places like South Africa, in America where Africans were taken as slaves, and in Ireland, and in many, many places, Turks with the Armenians. I know what war could do to people, and I know the value of healing. And when I refer to war, I think there's a war inside each one of us, I think. Because war starts inside most of us, you know, when we're children. Depends how we're all treated in a family, if you feel you're treated fairly or not fairly, if you come from a family where people communicate through fighting or communicate peacefully. But war starts in the beginning of most of our lives, and it depends how we resolve it, I think. And often unresolved wars, whether they're individually or collectively, lead to just further consequences which can't be good for anyone, really. And the Palestinian issue, the problem with the Palestinian issue is not that there's two people in a land. Palestine originally, from I understood from my mom, my mom has never been in school, so she doesn't share her stories politically. She doesn't have that kind of complexity. She shares it in a very naive, matter-of-fact way. But originally, Palestine is a place where many people lived. There were Jews. Jews have moved from Poland and from other places, I understood, at the beginning of the last century. And my mom said, in fact, we used to have good relations with them, and they taught us how to better use the land. We used to plant the same thing over and over, and they suggested to us it's good to plant other things. So, and Jerusalem, for example, also, if you've been to the East Jerusalem, now it's neither Christian or Muslim or Jewish. It's a very multicultural city, and if you go to Jerusalem, you'll find a street, a neighborhood for Africans, another for Armenians, another for I forgot what, you know. But like it's historically it's a very multicultural place, and so. What's the problem with Palestinians? The problem, I'll tell you. For example, since the war on Gaza happened, and I don't call it conflict, it's a war because even though there's firework missiles going from Gaza, they're really more like firework things. Of course, they were used highly in the media to create a case of victimization and etc. But it's not a war. It's not an equal war where we should call it a war. And unfortunately, so much visual ugliness has shown in Gaza, where so many families collectively have died or left one child alive. And one image I remember I listened to and was described to me, where a child was the only one in, I think it was, I forgot, a girl or a boy, was left in his family, which is a typical story in Gaza, and just was going crazy, not knowing where to go, where to look for security, etc. But I've been trying to go as a psychologist to do healing in Gaza, and it requires a lot of procedures. We need a permit from Israeli militaries to go even for the most urgent needs to Gaza, and it's the same from us. Ramallah from Gaza is about the same distance from Belfast to here, I would say. It's about the same distance, but it feels further than Ireland. I was much easier able to come here to North Ireland and go to Gaza. I haven't been able to go there since 2012. So why is it difficult? Because we don't have freedom of mobility. Everywhere you move, in the West Bank, for example, you face a checkpoint. To get out of Ramallah, which is a beautiful city. Ramallah has everything in it, because someone asked, how is Ramallah? I love Ramallah. I mean, Ramallah has also evening life, there's culture, there's concerts, there's theater. But to move out of Ramallah, it requires passing so many checkpoints in any direction you go to. And there's surprise checkpoints that really can delay your life and make you feel like you really don't control your life. So there's an issue of confinement. I mean, Palestinians love guests, just like Irish people, I know. You're very hospitable, and I know we love guests. And I've actually even brought Israelis to my mom's house to kind of break the barrier, because well, the kind of dialogue we mostly have with Israelis is we don't really, unless we go outside the country and meet at a conference. And as an example of how I met Maureen the first time, through some professional conference where they happened to be Israelis. Unfortunately, the wall, I call it the separation wall, because I believe all walls in history haven't been built for security purposes, whether it's East-West Germany, whether it's anywhere in South Africa. Walls have just been separation walls. And how else can people in power really control a people, any people, whether you're on the, think you're on the privileged side or you're on the victim side, but through separation and dehumanization. So now to Palestinians, Israelis are just people with guns, and to Israelis, Palestinians are just terrorists. And, you know, maybe if they're kind, they think, they deserve to live, but let them live away from us, let the wall stay. Many. Of course, there's exceptions to that rule. When media becomes so loud, people with just voices don't have much chance. So I think people who think alike, often, like in many places, people think alike and don't dare to say the idea, and then one brave person says it, and then the idea just emerges. It's the case. I think many Israelis are also misled by the media, really. Where was I going to? So I think this is the problem has to do, and I'm also, so for example, if you go look at the map of Palestine and the West Bank, every day there's confiscation of land, or there's always a new excuse to confiscate land for simple farmers who are very apolitical, who just really love their land. And so the settlement, in the place of the land, a settlement is built, and then so much security is around it, where it blocks people's movement, people's access to water, people's access to their own land and trees, everything. And this is an everyday practice. Someone told me recently, Laila, why didn't people in the West Bank do more demonstrations? I said, honestly, people are fed up. Because I was telling Maureen on the way here that we tend to normalize the abnormal. Like, you know, you sit 2 hours at the checkpoint and you say, well, luckily they didn't shoot me, so you just go. Yeah. Really. And I remember a great example of that, sad but great. Like I asked someone, I wanted to leave. Now, by the way, we're not allowed to go through the Ben Gurion Israeli airport. So I don't know what could be more apartheid than that. We're not allowed to go to the sea, which is just like 40 minutes away from Ramallah. We're not allowed to go to the airport. We're not allowed to visit relatives who can be very close because of checkpoints. So there's so much community disconnection. And this is the real reality. And I'm not just telling you this because I don't want sympathy. I just want to put you in a bit of the reality. And you could never get the reality unless you visit. So I invite all of you to go visit Palestine. And you'll really then feel it. It's so visual and it's so felt in your heart and in your bones when you come, the injustice and how the country is cut into very small pieces. So Palestinians are really very tired all over. Last year I worked 6 months in Lebanon, and I worked with Syrians, but I also worked with Palestinians whose families were refugees from 1948 in the camps in Lebanon, and they are deprived of at least 90 jobs in Lebanon and have so much restrictions. And so this unresolved issue is just really demonstrating itself everywhere you go, in Gaza, in Ramallah, in Lebanon. Everywhere you go, it needs a just solution where there is equality. I can tell you, young Palestinians now say, I think the best thing is to live in a one-state solution, to have a one-state solution where we have equal rights, equal access for mobility, equal marketing, equal everything. And we don't care what you call it. Call the country anything. Call it Arabic. Just let us live with dignity. This is where Palestinians are at now. But the world insists to want to divide through checkpoints, through walls, through labeling of people, and you understand this. And this is where we're at now. And to me, it's a very personal issue, this labeling and division, because as I shared with some of you, as a child, I had to be put in an English missionary boarding school, which separated me from my own siblings. And I know, going between a secular Muslim family and a very Christian school. I learned from early on in my life that all this separation and we are the right ones, you are the wrong ones is just absolute bullshit. It's not right. Because I always tell people being blind also is a privilege, can be a big privilege in many ways that I won't just tell you now. Some of them are naughty ones. Right? But it's a privilege because you really tend to feel human beings. Like once I remember I was with an Israeli friend in a taxi in Jerusalem, and I had a very nice conversation, and she said, the driver you were speaking to is a settler with a big beard, and if you've seen him, you wouldn't have had this conversation with him. I said, yeah, but I saw a person. And even she, who was an Israeli, wanted me to interact with him through that label of the whatever made him look like a settler. But I converse with a person, and I converse with people. And this is one privilege. And before I share with you something, I want to share with you in Arabic. I want to check how much Arabic you speak. Talking about how we all, if we don't use our critical thinking and if we don't use our instinct and our common sense, we are blindly following, labeling ourselves and each other and forcing ourselves in a box of victimhood, which I don't go for. Being blind, being Palestinian, being a woman, I always refuse to go into that victimhood box. I believe we people have amazing power. And the greatest power I found in my life has been love, really. And I mean, people never take from Jesus, love your enemy. How did they manage to make enemies of the closest people? It's beyond me, right? People never managed to take from Jesus the idea of when they were going to stone the prostitute, and he said, whoever is without a sin, stone her. We don't take these messages for the deep value they have. We tend to do exact opposite of judging, of dividing, of labeling, of hating. Most religions have also these messages in them, but you just don't know how religions have become a source of division and tribe and even a source of war. I mean, how could, because I happen to know most about Christianity, I wonder, I was discussing with a bishop an ex-bishop who supported the war on Iraq, and he said, yeah, we have to get rid of Saddam Hussein. And I said, how could you be a bishop and support war? How about thou shalt not kill? So we forget to take the soul messages in what we read often. And the best way to take the messages is really treating people like we want to be treated. And we often tend to forget this. I will share with you a last story that actually just came to my mind that I really enjoy talking about judgment and label. I once was in New York using my cane, and I missed my train. I needed a public phone to call my sister to tell her that I'll be late. And someone noticed I was a bit lost, and he came and said, can I help you? And I felt in my instinct he was a homeless man, because I could feel he was carrying a bag and a little trolley perhaps or something. And I kind of sneakily asked this guy, where do you live? And he said, on street. I said, really, why? And he said, I have an illness, which was HIV. And I said, yes. So when he said that, at least knowingly, this was my first time to know I'm talking to someone with HIV. And I said, you know what, this is what I need to do, call, and I have an hour. Do you want to have a drink with me? He said, with you? I said, yeah, we can have a drink here at the station or a bite or something. So we went to, I think it was Dunkin' Donuts or one of those places, to have a bite, and I let him be in front of me. I was nicely dressed. I had an official meeting, and I'm sure he wasn't. So he was ahead of me, and the woman kind of meanly said, do you have money on you? And I said, yes, ma'am, he has money on him. Please, it's my treat, so please give him what he wants. And we sat, and I wanted to hear his story. How did he become here, sleeping around the train station? So he comes from a black family, poor family, had a lot of violence, because often poverty is connected to violence, and injustice is connected to violence often, and used different kind of drugs, and had HIV, and as a result, of course, had no place in society and wound up in the street, right? And so at the end of our conversation, we both kept quiet for 5 minutes, and he wrote something for me that meant that millions of people pass me, but this is the first time somebody sees me. Someone who's blind saw me. And I was so close to tears and really didn't want to cry in front of him. You know, when you're a trained therapist, you learn to just hold your tears until the client leaves and you just, right? So he left me looking for his partner who's also an HIV survivor. And I ran to the bar. I knew the manager a little bit because I often went there. And I just couldn't stop crying. And the guy, who was a Greek guy, came and said, Laila, what's wrong? And when I was able to speak, I told him, this is what made me sad. He said, you're so silly. There's millions like him. What's the big deal? And I said, but exactly, Andreas, this is a big deal, that these millions are so invisible. So it's when we don't, when human beings, for their deep value of just being a human being, is not visible, judged by a color, judged by a disease, judged by appearance, judged by a disability, judged by a religion, by whatever, you know, we see that, which is so irrelevant, and we don't see the human being. And this is perhaps really my message to all of us, which I know you have so much wisdom. I was telling Maureen, it's so humbling to speak to people in this country, because I know you know a lot of our experience and of how we feel. And I mean, everyone I ran to here, I never knew what religion, what anything they were just absolutely wonderful people. So this is basically my message to you.
So we'll use this now then, I think. If only you could see. Anybody, any questions or even just reflections on what Laila's had to say? If you want to put your hand.
Just ask Laila, are you
Sorry, I'm going to try and attempt to use this, so I'll move around. It's not actually for the sound, it's for the recording. So you're all right. There you go.
Laila, I'm wondering if your people know how much support they have here in Derry and in Ireland, and how much coverage that we are getting via Facebook, etc.
They do.
And wondering, is that encouragement for them?
Big time. I think feeling supported when you're undermined in the world is a big meaning, really. And people don't want much, just want to know that people understand, and they do.
Thank you.
Historically, I know Israel was created, and originally this place was not very much inhabited either. But with the backing of states or so many things, Israel has survived. They are doing too much to Palestinians. They are in prison, rather in closed prison.
Yes.
And they have point, and word is understanding, but only states is not understanding, giving them money and everything else what they need. What do you think, what will be the future?
I think, who knows anymore? You know, I went to study in my older age something in School of Government at Harvard to try to understand politics, and I came back more ignorant. But I know from reality that unresolved injustice can only last so long. And I know that power, we say power is like a ball. One day it's in my hand and one day it's in your hand. One day it was in Hitler's hand, now it's in Israeli hands or American hands. But it won't stay there, and unfortunately, this is what keeps the negative cycle going, unresolved injustice. And who knows what the consequences eventually will be. I just pray for it won't be too damaging for humanity eventually.
Right, thanks.
Sure. Can I share with you something I want you to hear in Arabic, and then if you want to ask questions, we can? Yeah. I felt so much like letting you hear this. Should I tell you who it is, or just share it? And okay, it is. Who of you heard of Mahmoud Darwish, a Palestinian poet? Mahmoud Darwish? Okay, I will ask you to hear it. And Richie. Richie's. I love saying Richie in the Irish fashion. I pretend to. Richie is my technical support person for now in this. I'll ask you to hear it, and then I'll just feel in the voice, even if you want to close your eyes. And I just want to feel what you felt from this, and I'll tell you what the words mean, okay? Huh?
وأنت تعد فطورك فكر بغيرك لا تنس قوت الحمام وأنت تخوض حروبك فكر بغيرك لا تنس من يطلبون السلام وأنت تسدد فاتورة الماء فكر بغيرك من يرضعون الغمام وأنت تعود إلى البيت بيتك فكر بغيرك لا تنسى شعب الخيام وأنت تنام وتحصي الكواكب فكر بغيرك ثمة من لم يجد حيزا للمنام وأنت تحرر نفسك بالاستعارات فكر بغيرك من فقدوا حقهم في الكلام وأنت تفكر بالآخرين البعيدين فكر بنفسك قل ليتني شمعة في الظلام
Oh, really? So you can see the meaning of the word? Not from there? What did you sense if you didn't see the words from this poem? What feeling does it give you?
Gentleness?
Yeah.
Hope, yeah.
Hope. I love it, yes. It's very hopeful to me because Mahmoud Darwish is a poet who died a few years ago. I attended his funeral and I have met him. Mahmoud Darwish lived a lot of the longest time of his life in exile, and he was allowed to return when the PA returned in the 90s. But this poem is about compassion. It says, think of others. And it's so beautiful because it is to me about hope, because for someone to encourage compassion when he lived the life he lived, to me, is the ultimate hope. And so what he says is, as you're eating your breakfast, think of others. Don't forget to feed the pigeons. And when you're paying your water bill, think of others, those who can only drink the dewdrops. And as you sleep, watching the stars, think of others, those who have nowhere to sleep. As you liberate yourself with slogans, think of others, think of those who cannot speak, who have no voice and freedom to speak. What else? When you plan your wars, think of others, think of those who desire peace. And at the end, he says, when you're alone, think of others, the far in your own home, think of others, those, and wish, I can't translate them. Okay, when you're sitting alone, far in your own home, think of others and wish you were a candle to light their darkness. So I find this simple poem so profound and beautiful coming from this beautiful poet I know. And this is how I'll end unless you have anything to say.
Laila, it's Susan here. I'm just on the other side of the room now, not beside you.
Yes.
I'm just interested to know, as a psychotherapist, where do you start in terms of your work? Where do you start with people that are probably and definitely very traumatized? And I know particularly you work for UNICEF, so that would involve a lot of children and young people.
Basically, I start with securing safe space for people, and set the rules together with the participants on how can it be safe for them, and them sharing their story from how they experienced this, how they felt it. I mean, it's a whole long thing, but by people sharing and put, like, when I notice things I need to mention, like I understand it must be humiliating if people have been through torture, and I understand it's humiliating if people have been living a dignified life and had to sleep on the street for a month, or, you know, looked good all the time and suddenly had to wear the same clothes for a whole month or two until they manage to get something. So it's like really putting whatever needs to be put on the table and normalizing it, not that it's normal to be tortured or so, but demystifying it, if you wish, so that people are not humiliated. And I love, my favorite ways working is in groups, because then people don't think I'm alone in this and are embarrassed and silent, because I think in trauma, silence and keeping it to yourself is the most sickening thing. In fact, Palestinians now, we have so much health problems, where cancer, diabetes, heart problems, young people just fall in 2 seconds from heart problems. And I wouldn't want to be a young man in Palestine, because the way they're treated I mean, I'm not treated well on checkpoints, but if you were a young man, it's even much, much worse, because you're automatically an enemy. At times, being blind gives me a little bit of, you know, something like I can say a couple of sentences and maybe so far get away with it. But so you start basically with this, but it's a whole long story, Susan. And I think I tried to ask the question, in spite of what you've been through, what's the lesson learned? And I remember in a refugee camp with both Palestinians and Syrians in Lebanon, I asked the women, in every, you know, the Spanish saying, I think we all have it in our cultures, out of every problem comes something good. What's the good that you learn from this? Even though I tell them I'm embarrassed to ask such a question, because I know for now you can't see anything good in it. But the women almost all said, we have to educate our girls. We have to educate all our children, but especially our girls, because they saw how lack of education for girls really put many girls at a big risk of vulnerability for anything you can imagine. So there's always something good that keeps people going and gives them hope. And I always ask that question at the end, in time.
Anybody else?
Laila, I gather from what you were saying earlier that you would like to see a single state, multicultural. Are there many people in the Palestinian community and the Israeli communities who would think likewise, and is there any realistic possibility of that coming about?
It depends on the big kitchen of politicians, but I know for young Palestinians, they're so fed up, they just want to really move and live like all kids live in the world. And I think, was it Bush? Was it Bush who said something wise for change? He said something like, you can change the public opinion in a minute. But I think Israelis, for example, they're fed a lot of, they have privileges from a two-state solution. They live near the sea, they took the best parts of the land, settlers have the most beautiful parts of villages, but I think things can change eventually. I know it's not at all a practical solution to separate this land, because it really would mean Bantustans, or like the native inhabitants of America are living in reservations. So I know eventually it has to come through.
See anyone else like to share?
Could I just ask, all I want to ask is, how can we access that beautiful poem?
It's Mahmoud Darwish, and it's called Think of Others.
So if you go to YouTube, you can get...
Yes, Darwish, I think it's D-A-R-W-I-S-H, Mahmoud, M-A-H-M-O-U-D.
We'll get the link. We'll get the link, and we'll just make sure that people can get hold of it.
It's on Facebook.
Is it?
It struck me, listening to the voice, that I wasn't sure that he was a poet. I wasn't listening carefully enough at first. And then when I heard he was a poet, I said, oh, that explains it. A poet speaks from a different reality from the politician.
Yeah.
This man's voice wasn't ranting.
True.
I can think of two men, and I'm sure nearly everybody here will be thinking the same two men who ranted over history, and one woman. Yeah, you all know who she was too, right? That isn't confined to those two men and that woman among politicians or among the population. We all rant in our way. And we need something of that poetic way of seeing things. And that poetic way of seeing things is also linked to what you said, Laila, about Jesus and what he was all about.
Yeah. Nice.
Anyone else? Still have a little time left. I can't believe that nobody has anything else they want to share or ask. Dennis, go ahead.
Laila, is there much constructive dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians to seek a solution, a long-term solution?
Not yet. There's one dialogue between politicians who in the world globally have self-interest, and there is one dialogue, there's different kinds of dialogues, and in my experience, when people's interests and benefits are touched, then the dialogue tends to end, because it's frightening for someone who earned a beautiful big house of a Palestinian to suddenly feel the fear of wanting to lose it. Although I really think, even my mom says, you know, God forgive them, but why can't they just live, you know, they took our village, but why can't they just let us live in peace now? So it'll have to come, my guess is. I don't know how, but so far it doesn't seem to be in the interest of the big kitchens of politics.
I'd just say it's been a great privilege to hear you today. And one of the things that I really appreciate is the joy, in spite of all that you've been through and you know the kind of work you do and whatever, that sense of kind of joy and hope that you have shared with us. Thank you.
Thank you. I always say there is no revolution without dancing. I mean, it's too serious. And you know, I like this. You know, Osho. Oh, I heard an Indian accent there to my left, right?
Yeah.
I like Osho. He says something, a serious soul is a sick soul. I really believe this. So I learned to laugh at myself from early on.
I think that's something you have in common, I think, with us.
With the Irish, indeed.
We've learned to laugh in the face of adversity.
Yes.
Adversity.
Yes.
I suppose, you know, I've known Laila for quite a time. And Laila, you talked about the importance of whenever you talk, it's not about with an intellectual head or an academic head, but you know, you talk about how you use your instinct, and what impresses me so much, it is about how being so deeply human and connecting at the human level and how important it is. And I suppose it was the conversations that you've had with Israelis and how they seem to be imprisoned. Would you just say a little bit about the Israelis and their state of mind?
I mean, after all, they're people, right? And often, when they're, I mean, I meet them as human beings, as people, and I know that people who are on the oppressor side never live in peace amongst themselves, but they also live in a dilemma of, as I said, wanting to keep what they had and wanting to acknowledge justice. And it's not an easy place, I'd say, to be in. It's been interesting to have conversation. We definitely, in our conversation, I managed a lot of human relations. And again, it's not really about giving me a material stone or a house. It's about just acknowledgement, really, in many cases. it's hard to say what to say. But I remember, I don't know if you were once when we were conversing, one guy very casually shared his story of his mother, where they took her to her original village. He's a psychologist from Gaza, and that her just legs won't carry her to go back to Gaza. She just wanted to stay in the village. I don't know if you were then. Yes, you think you were. And they had to drag her out of the village, because often you have a permit when you go to Israeli areas. If you're Palestinian, you have a permit till 7 in the evening or 10, and then you really have to go home. Otherwise, you can be fined or jailed. So they had to drag her back to the village. And shortly after she died, and he was just saying how important it was for his mother, who was a refugee of that village, to go visit it once, and then she was ready to let go. And I remember Israelis, even those who are very enlightened in that group, reacted very negatively. Their deep fears were like, what is he saying? We should leave the 1948 countries? What is he saying? He was saying none of that. He was just saying how his mother needed a therapeutic closure for herself. And it caused a big turbulence, that story, which really had no other intentions. So we're all, I think, we all live in old fears and in ingrained fears. Unless we face them very bravely, then they control us, and it's better to manage them. What can I say?
Yeah, actually, what for the women? And if Palestinians are basically Muslims, are they freer Muslims than Saudi Arabia?
Oh, definitely. Oh my God.
It looks like you are quite Western here.
It's leading up to the story of swimming.
What I see from films, I think women don't look to be too much oppressed. Is that true?
Right. Women in Palestine, see, everything has its own benefits, even occupation. But women had to be a part of the resistance and a part of the revolution. And because we didn't often have official governments, and even now we have authority but not government, NGOs and non-governmental organizations have actually operated the country quite a bit, society. And women had a great role in it. Like, if you know Hanan Ashrawi, she's a very intelligent spokeswoman, but many others like her. Unfortunately, but the more confinement happens against society, like the case in Gaza, women usually in every war pay the highest price. So in Gaza, I'd say everyone is oppressed now with the double confinement of Hamas and Israelis, but women pay a higher price, really, now. But yes, no comparison between.
Are they allowed to drive?
Oh, yeah. No, there's no comparison with Saudi. Come and visit. No comparison. God forbid, I wouldn't be there. I'm not allowed to drive. That's not fair.
Oh, my goodness. Don't know where to go after that.
Just don't get into a car with her.
If you want to read more, I downloaded a book from Amazon there, which is The Red Rose of Palestine, which is a collection of emails and stories from Laila. What's the name of the guy, Laila, that put them together? Hugo.
Keep forgetting his last name. He's a good friend of mine, and he's a Danish author who I used to write I usually write when I'm upset or something and I need to talk to myself. I used to send him some things, and he said, can you promise to send me things and we'll see what to do with them. So he did a book between my writings and his and others.
I've been reading it. It's something you could dip in and out of, but it actually gives you a really very interesting insight into Laila and to you, actually, Laila. I would say, you talk a lot about being rooted and connectedness, and it's very human. I mean, you talked about rainbows in the sky, possibly, or that might be something else I read on you. But it's I think you would really, if you've enjoyed listening to Laila today, I think you will enjoy reading. And obviously, the stories, it's difficult and it's harrowing. Some of them it's not easy, to get your head around. The circumstances of the emails, and you can feel I felt a lot of despair, but I also felt hope as well. I think, you always have hope that things will get better.
Yeah.
You know, so I would recommend you download that from Amazon. I have it on my Kindle.
I often write when I'm sad, but remember when you're reading it that I'm often laughing and being a clown and swim, and I hike and I ride horses. Someone promised to take me horse riding.
Actually, now it's great to read it now, and actually you can hear your voice in my head. Sometimes when you read a book like that, and it's a real person, unless you know who they are, but it's great to be able to hear your voice in my head. So the guy's name is Hugo Horlick-Carlson, and the book's called The Red Rose of Palestine. So there you go. Go home this evening and download that from Amazon.
Can you circulate that information as well?
Certainly can, no problem.
Laila, I think though you're imprisoned and your people are imprisoned, I can detect very much your freedom.
Thank you. I feel it. Thank you.
It might be a nice place just to finish up. Everybody's happy with that.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
What I also should say is thank you very much to Maureen and the Junction for facilitating Laila to come over here this week. She's had a very busy schedule with us. We've been keeping her busy, but it's been just so interesting. I know you're doing the FWIN, the Foyle Women's Information Network Conference tomorrow, and it's unfortunately there are no places left, so sorry, you're lucky to be here today. But Maureen, thank you so much for allowing us the privilege of hearing Laila share her stories and her wisdoms. Thank you.
Yeah, Maureen should get the biggest applaud, I think.
Just to say, next week we have Julianne Campbell from the Bloody Sunday Trust. She'll be here at our lunchtime event. She'll be talking about the new redevelopment of the Free Dairy Museum, which should be interesting. And the following week, to put it in your diaries, I know you have Wednesdays always in your diaries, which I'm really grateful for. We have Roy Arbuckle. He's going to do an extract from a musical he's hoping to put out, that he will be putting out next year, called The Fountain. So he's doing a little extract from that. So that's something different, a little performance. So that's something else to look forward to in a couple of weeks' time. So we like to mix it up a bit, you know. So listen, I'm just going to end it there. And thank you all so much for coming. Thanks a million. Thank you, Laila. That was brilliant.